Welcome to today's deep dive. We're jumping right back to March 13th, 1997.
Yeah, it's a very specific date and a completely different world, honestly.
Right. I mean, think about it. No smartphones, no social media feeds to doom scroll through. If you wanted to be entertained on a Thursday night, you basically just went outside.
And that night in particular, everyone actually had a really good reason to be outside.
The comet, right?
Exactly. The Hale-Bopp Comet was passing by. It was this massive, bright smear in the sky, totally visible to the naked eye. So you have this huge population, I mean, from Nevada all the way down to Tucson, Arizona, and they're already outside looking up.
Which is honestly the perfect setup for what happened next, because while everyone is staring at this, dirty snowball out in space, thousands of people start seeing something else.
Thousands. That is the key word here. This wasn't just a solitary sighting.
Right. This isn't a lonely farmer in a cornfield saying he saw a flying saucer. Thousands of people witness phenomena in the sky. It is easily one of the largest mass sighting events in human history. They saw something that literally blocked out the stars.
The sheer scale of it is what makes it so fascinating. But here's the thing we need to clarify right off the bat, because there's so much confusion about this. Most people think of the Phoenix Lights as one single event.
Oh, totally. Because of the famous video, whenever you see a documentary, they always show that row of amber lights just hovering over the mountains.
Yeah, that is what everyone remembers. But if you actually dig into the timeline, which is what we are doing today, you realize we are dealing with two completely distinct events.
Two events that happened on the same night.
Yes. There was the first one, which people call the V, this massive silent craft that cruised over the state around 8:00 p.m. And then there were the Orbs that appeared around 10:00 p.m.
And history has just sort of mashed them together into one big confused memory. So our mission for this deep dive is to pull those two events apart. We are going to look at the official military explanations and weigh them against some truly bizarre eyewitness accounts. We even have a Hollywood A-lister and a sitting governor in the mix.
It is such a wild case study. Let's start with that first event, the V. This is the one that really unnerved people.
Yeah, let's trace the timeline because it is super tight. It starts around 8:15 p.m. up near Henderson, Nevada. Then it moves southeast. People on Paulden see it. Then Prescott, Arizona. And eventually it is just cruising right over the Metro Phoenix area before heading toward Tucson.
The consistency of the descriptions from all those different towns is what stands out to me.
Yeah.
Usually in a mass sighting, you get wild variations. One guy sees a cigar shape, someone else sees a saucer. But here, almost everyone described a massive boomerang or a V-shaped object.
And we have to emphasize the size. I was looking through these reports, and some estimates from witnesses said it was a mile wide.
A mile wide.
A solid object, a mile wide, floating over major American cities.
Which, just to be clear, is technically impossible for any aircraft we know of. The structural stress alone would snap a mile-wide plane in half. But witnesses were absolutely adamant. They said it wasn't just lights flying in formation. It was a solid, black mass that blotted out the star field as it passed overhead.
And it was completely silent.
Yes.
That is the part that gets me. If you have something that massive moving through the air, you expect a rumble, right? Or wind displacement, something. But people reported this eerie, heavy silence.
Now, we need to talk about who was seeing this thing, because it is really easy for skeptics to dismiss anonymous calls to a UFO hotline, but it is much harder to dismiss Kurt Russell.
I love this detail so much. Snake Plissken himself was a witness.
It's amazing. But forget the celebrity angle for a second and just think about his actual credentials. Kurt Russell is a licensed pilot. He was up in the air that night, flying his own private plane into Phoenix Sky Harbor. And he's got his stepson, Oliver Hudson, in the passenger seat.
They are on approach, just doing a standard flight. And Oliver looks out the window and asks, "Pa, what are those lights?"
And this is where Russell's pilot training kicks in. He doesn't just panic. He looks at the configuration. He sees 6 lights in a perfect, rigid V shape. So he calls the tower. He's speaking the language of aviation, asking, "Do you have any traffic in that sector?"
And the tower says negative. They see absolutely nothing on radar.
That is chilling. You are a pilot. You are looking at a massive object with navigation lights coming right at you, and the guys with the radar screens are telling you the sky is totally empty. Russell claims he was the first civilian pilot to officially report the lights that night.
So you have an experienced pilot in the air confirming this. But on the ground, you have an even higher profile witness, the governor of Arizona at the time, Fife Symington.
Oh, the Symington story is a masterclass in political damage control. At the time, the state was practically on the verge of panic. The police switchboards were melting down, people were demanding answers, so Symington held a press conference.
Right, and he says he found the culprit.
Yeah, he says, "We found the culprit," and he brings out his chief of staff, dressed in handcuffs and a cheap plastic alien mask.
Which, looking back, is incredibly insulting to the thousands of people who were genuinely terrified.
It was a total mockery. He turned it into a joke to diffuse the tension. But here is the massive twist that came out years later. After he left office, Symington admitted that he actually saw the craft himself that night.
Wow.
And he was a veteran, he was an Air Force guy, he knew planes. He described what he saw as enormous and inexplicable. He called it a craft of unknown origin.
So he just flat out admitted he lied to the public to prevent mass hysteria.
Exactly. He even noted that he had called the commander of Luke Air Force Base and a National Guard general that night to demand answers. And they were just as perplexed as he was.
Okay, so we have the governor and a pilot. Very credible witnesses. But their descriptions are still fairly, I don't know, safe. It's lights in the sky, it's a big shape. It's mysterious, but it's not high strangeness.
Right, it still falls within the realm of maybe it's a top secret military project.
But then I found this specific report in the deep dive materials from a witness named Tuzahu. She was a hospice RN driving near the freeway that night. And this is where the secret military plane theory just flies out the window for me.
Her account is incredible, primarily because of the proximity. Most people saw this V shape from miles away or high up in the sky. She claims she was driving near some freeway construction, which elevated her car, and this object passed just 30 feet over her head.
30 feet. That is practically touching distance. She wasn't just looking at glowing lights, she was looking at the actual hull of the craft.
And the visual details she gives are so specific. She described a tube within a tube structure on the craft.
Yeah, and inside the tube, she saw this strange liquid. She compared the color to orange crush.
Orange crushed lava. That is such a striking detail. She said this lava-like liquid was flowing out of the tube, falling down about 6 feet, and then, and this is the craziest part, falling back up into the craft.
Falling back up, like a fountain of molten light that defies gravity.
Exactly. Some sort of closed-loop containment field or gravity manipulation. Whatever it was, it certainly defies any conventional aerodynamics. She also noted the bottom of the craft was gunmetal gray, and it had thousands of these little oval indentations.
And despite being 30 feet away from a machine the size of a city block, she felt no heat. She heard no sound, no wind displacement. Just this sudden, overwhelming feeling of extreme gratefulness.
That emotional response is surprisingly common in close encounter reports. It is almost as if the brain just short circuits. But okay, as compelling as falling up orange crushed lava is, we have to put our skeptic hats on. Because there was a very real, very terrestrial explanation offered for this 8:00 p.m. event.
Right. The military explanation. Let's get into it.
To understand the official story, we have to look at a guy named Mitch Stanley. He was an amateur astronomer living in Scottsdale. While everyone else was looking with their naked eyes or blurry camcorders, he had a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope.
So he actually has the magnification to see what's going on.
He does. He spots the lights, he trains his scope on them, and he doesn't see a giant alien arc. He clearly sees individual planes. He specifically noted that they had square wings.
Square wings. Okay, if you know anything about military aviation, that points to exactly one thing. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warhog.
Spot on. And this lines up perfectly with the official military explanation, which involves an exercise called Operation Snowbird. A squadron of A-10 Warhogs from the Maryland Air National Guard was in town for winter training. The explanation is that they were flying in a tight wedge formation.
But wait, help me understand this. How do thousands of people mistake a bunch of loud, boxy fighter jets for a silent, solid, mile-wide boomerang?
It all comes down to how the human brain processes incomplete data in the dark. It is an optical illusion known as illusory contours.
Illusory contours. Break that down for me.
Your brain hates ambiguity. If it sees a perfectly synchronized row of lights moving against a pitch-black sky, it is energetically cheaper for your brain to interpret that as one single, solid object rather than 5 separate planes flying with impossible precision. Your brain literally fills in the gaps, It draws the black lines connecting the lights.
So the giant black mass that people said blocked out the stars, that was just the empty night sky between the planes.
That is the argument, yes. You hallucinate the whole because it makes more sense to your perception.
And what about the silence? Warhogs are notoriously loud.
They are loud when they're low and strafing. But at high altitude, just cruising, they can be surprisingly quiet, add in sound shadows and wind direction, and the engine noise can be masked completely from the ground.
Okay, that explains the visual and the audio. But what about the radar? Kurt Russell called the tower and they saw nothing. Governor Symington called the bases and they were baffled. If it was just a routine training flight, why act like it's a ghost ship?
This is where the bureaucracy makes everything look like a conspiracy. The Phoenix New-Times did a huge investigation into the radar issue. They found out that the primary radar at Luke Air Force Base is programmed to filter out clutter.
Clutter. Meaning what?
Meaning if planes are flying in a tight formation, or if they aren't squawking a specific transponder code, the radar system just ignores them, so the screen doesn't become an unreadable mess of dots.
It just ignores a massive formation of fighter jets. That seems like a pretty glaring flaw in a defense system.
It is definitely concerning. But the real issue is what happened to the evidence. People demanded to see the radar tapes from that night to prove it was A-10s. But the military came back and said, sorry, we recycle those tapes every 15 days.
Recycled.
Taped right over. By the time the public pressure mounted, the permanent record was completely gone.
That is infuriatingly convenient. But all right, the A-10 theory does cover the V-shape, the motion, and the lights. It doesn't really explain the hospice nurse seeing the falling up lava or the gunmetal hull, but it does cover the vast majority of the 8:00 p.m. reports.
Which brings us to the second event of the night.
Right, the Orbs.
This happened around 10:00 p.m., and this is the footage everyone has seen on TV.
A series of glowing amber lights appearing in a perfect line, hovering and then slowly disappearing one by one.
Yes. And while the 8:80 p.m. event with V is still hotly debated, this 10:00 p.m. event is basically solved.
These were the flares.
Exactly. These were LUU-2BB illumination flares dropped by that same Maryland Air National Guard unit. They were dropping them over the Berry M Goldwater Range. A pilot named Lieutenant Colonel Ed Jones eventually went on the record and confirmed his unit dropped them during a training exercise.
But the witnesses pushed back really hard on this, didn't they? Even commercial pilots were saying flares don't act like that. They said flares drift and sputter, but these lights were completely stationary and symmetrical.
They absolutely appeared stationary. But again, this is a massive optical illusion caused by the geography. The military dropped those flares behind the Sierra Estrella mountain range.
Behind the mountains. Okay, picture this for me.
Imagine it is pitch black outside. You can't actually see the mountains. They just blend in with the rest of the dark sky. So when the flares are slowly falling behind that invisible mountain range, your eye doesn't see them dropping behind a physical object. To you, it looks as a light is just floating in the empty sky, and then suddenly it blinks out.
Ah, because it dipped below the ridgeline?
Precisely. And because they were miles and miles away, the downward motion was so slow that it looked completely stationary to the naked eye.
So what we actually have here is a perfect storm of confusion.
The perfect storm. Think about the psychology of the entire state that night. At 8:30 p.m., a massive V formation flies over. Hundreds of thousands of people see it. They panic. The news stations are going crazy. Everyone is running outside, grabbing their camcorders, just staring at the sky. They are completely primed for an alien invasion.
And then 2 hours later, while the whole state is holding its breath and looking up,
the military drops a string of high-intensity flares.
And everyone hits record on their cameras.
Exactly. So the footage that goes viral, the video that becomes synonymous with the Phoenix Lights, is actually just the flares. But the story that all the witnesses tell the media is about the silent, mile-wide ship from 2 hours earlier.
They completely conflated the two events. The skeptics point to the video of the flares and say, look, it's just flares, case closed. And the believers point to the V-shape and say, flares don't fly across the entire state, and they are just talking right past each other.
It is a textbook case of cognitive contamination. The 10:20 p.m. event completely contaminated the public memory of the 8:00 p.m. event.
I see how that happens. But honestly, even if we accept the planes and flares theory, which is clearly the most rational explanation we have, it still doesn't leave me entirely satisfied.
It shouldn't. Because the official explanation requires us to believe that thousands of people, including trained observers like pilots and military veterans, were collectively fooled by very basic optical illusions.
And it completely ignores the outliers. If we go back to Tuzahu, the nurse, If what flew over was just A-10 warhogs at 15,000 feet, why did she see a gunmetal hull 30 feet above her car? Why did she describe the falling up lava?
That is the data point that breaks the official model. You can explain away lights in the distance, but a close-up, sensory-rich description of impossible physics. You are left with two choices. Either she is completely fabricating the story, or there was something else in the sky that night hiding among the A-10s.
That is a really creepy thought. Mimicry.
There is a prominent theory in ufology that these phenomena mimic our technology. We see what we expect to see, or the phenomena camouflage themselves as something familiar to blend in.
Or let's look at it from the other angle. What if the flare drop at 10:00 p.m. wasn't just a convenient coincidence?
Stepping into the cover-up territory.
Well, just think about the timeline. You have a massive, unauthorized flyover at 8:00 p.m. The military is perplexed. The governor is demanding answers. Panic is setting in across a major metropolitan area. If you need to muddy the waters quickly, what is the best way to do it?
You drop some flares at 10:00 p.m. You give the public something really easy to film, and more importantly, something really easy to debunk later.
Exactly. You dismiss the entire night by explaining away the very end of it. It is the perfect diversion. Smoke and mirrors to distract everyone from the mile-wide thing that the governor actually saw.
It is a very provocative thought. Unfortunately, we will likely never know for sure. The radar tapes are gone, the witnesses are getting older. All we have left are the stories.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a really discomforting choice to make. Either thousands of people, including a sitting governor and experienced pilots, can suffer a mass delusion because of some high-altitude planes, or the military intentionally dropped flares hoping we would all stop asking questions about what really happened at 8 p.m. I don't know which is scarier, that we might be getting visited or that our perception of reality is that fragile.
I think I will take the aliens over the fragile reality, honestly.
I think I am with you on that. Thank you for untangling this mystery with us on today's deep dive. Make sure you keep looking up.
And always keep questioning what you see.